This is season 1, episode 3 of JonBenet Ramsey. This is part 2, so if you haven't checked out part 1, make sure you jump over there and listen to it first, and then jump back to this part to finish it out.
Another odd thing with JonBenet was the fact that she had, I know for a fact she had a mark on her neck, and then from some reports, some say that she also had another one like on her back or something, from what they think to be a stun gun to maybe use on her to keep her quiet, to get her out of her bed and down to the basement to where they were going to leave. So hypothetically, if it was an intruder, they would have went up to her room once her parents were in bed and used the stun gun, taken her downstairs, and then I don't know if at this point she was alert and fighting. Maybe she was still kind of just stunned by the stun gun. Nobody's ever going to know this besides who did this. At that point, the intruder would have had to put this garrote on her. Maybe they pushed her down and she hit her head on something. There wasn't really anything found in that particular room that they thought could have done it, I don't believe. Other places of the house, like a flashlight sitting on the counter in the kitchen, one of those heavy-duty metal ones was found. So that was kind of thought as the weapon. And I talked about the sexual abuse. Apparently it was done with the paintbrush that was used for the garrote. It is so horrific to even talk about. I hate those parts of these cases. I love the trying to figure out the case and the process that people do to figure out who did this to them. And that's why this case is so sad, because it's never came to an end. She had DNA left on her under her fingernails and in her underwear. I don't know if this intruder maybe just got carried away with her. I don't know. It's just a sick, twisted individual. And then thought, oh shit, you know, she's dead, so now I'm just going to escape. Maybe just left there, didn't run back for the ransom note, maybe to buy some time to hit the road and hide. Who knows? Now I'm going to kind of go over the other theory that someone in the family did it. This is really hard to think about, but I feel like a lot of people say that, and they're really like more on the intruder theory, because they're like, how could they do this to their daughter? Or how could anybody do this to their family member? And honestly, I feel like if you're truly in the true crime community and you have listened to so many stories, by now you're thinking, it happens. People are messed up. And almost every other story is about a family member doing something else to another family member. It happens. There's just sick people out here. So I, for one, am not throwing it out the window saying, how could they do that to their daughter? They didn't do it, because it does happen. It's horrific again, but it does happen. This time around, I'm going to give a little bit more details that I didn't before. So with this theory, there is a lot of different theories around this. Some people say that Patsy did it. They said that JonBenet was going through bedwetting and it was really making Patsy mad. So maybe she was tired and came to her room and just got really aggressive with her, maybe like threw her to the side, or, you know, did something, and maybe JonBenet had hit her head, and then maybe they staged the rest of it to make it look like it wasn't child abuse, which could have happened. It could have. I mean, I'm not going to say it didn't, because like I said, people are capable of a lot. I, for one, think that that theory is a little strange. I feel like if it was just over bedwetting, their child wouldn't have been molested. That's my opinion. Other people say that John did it because he had been maybe sexually abusing his daughter for some time now, and maybe got carried away. What people have said, this is really hard for me to understand too, because I feel like somebody that wealthy, someone doing that good in their career, the best year yet, and everything going so nicely, not just that, like on Christmas, really. Again, not saying that it didn't happen, because like I said, people are capable of everything. But that theory is still a little hard for me. I feel like there's a lot of holes in that theory. I feel like there's a lot of holes in that theory over intruder. But the one that really gets me is, What if Burke had something to do with this? And I feel like this is one of the top theories of most people. And it's really hard to think about because Burke was just a 9-year-old boy at the time. But the thing that I didn't mention before is the fact that when her autopsy was done, she had undigested pineapple in her stomach. And you kind of scratch your head and wonder, like, if John carried her to bed and as soon as they got home and then Burke had a snack after that, how did JonBenet have pineapple in her stomach? It's kind of strange. You know, then you think, okay, maybe she wet the bed, Patsy got it during the night, but Patsy never said that. She never reported that that happened. So what some people speculate is that JonBenet had woke up after John and Patsy had went to bed and came downstairs to see Burke eating pineapple and then wanted some. Maybe he said no, she grabbed some out of his bowl, and he hit her over the head with a flashlight and then took her downstairs and was a very curious 9-year-old boy. Maybe did some things then. A lot of people then want to bring up the stun gun, and that is where there's actually a documentary. It might have been CBS, I can't remember for sure, but they actually did some forensic work over their playroom, which again was a room by the wine cellar, and they had one of those train tracks back from the 90s, and if you take those tracks apart, there's some ends, and the ends are like a little pointy like they were back then. They actually matched up the same exact mark as a stun gun. So that's also a theory that maybe he didn't hit her head upstairs. Maybe she had stolen some pineapple and ran downstairs, because then you think, how could a 9-year-old carry his 6-year-old sister downstairs? Which I feel like could happen. It could have happened. But maybe she ran downstairs and he chased her and pushed her. Maybe she hit her neck and even back on those tracks, and even her head on an even harder toy. From there, it's hard to say if a 9-year-old boy would have been capable of sexual abuse or anything like that. I know that it's happened, but I don't know if I could really say that it did happen in this case, unless it was just out of pure curiosity. I don't know. Maybe just seeing his sister just lay there. I don't know. I would think that maybe he would just freak out and be like, oh my God, you know, and just kind of run off to bed and just kind of be like, I don't really know what to do, and go to bed. Again, this is theories. From there, this theory states that at 5:30, Patsy did get up, and maybe she did walk to JonBenet's bedroom and see that she was not there and freaked out and ran around looking for her. And if she's not in her bedroom and she's not in the main part of the house, where would you look? I would think the playroom. So if she went downstairs and found her daughter and yelled for John and he ran down there, at that moment, thinking that their daughter is dead, there is the theory that maybe they wanted to cover it up so that their son would be okay and that he wouldn't get the blame for an accident. So a lot of people from here want to speculate that, again, about the sexual abuse, about that type of ordeal. There was actually a full test done on the family members being put to write parts of the ransom note. And all of them passed this test besides Patsy Ramsey. She was not ruled out. There was also different wording in it that she had actually used in a Christmas card to somebody. And another thing that I did not mention about Patsy is that she actually did do some grad schooling for literature. To go along with this theory, there's also the fact that, again, we bring up the sexual abuse, and it's been said that maybe John had been partaking in that with his daughter, and because of that, maybe he had messed with her the night before when he did tuck her into bed and was freaked out knowing that law enforcement were going to get involved, so he had to really make it look like something bad had happened to her. And maybe he thought it'd be easy to do that and then just tell Patsy, like, I had to do it to make it look more like her family could never do this to her. Which, again, I don't think is impossible. Since Patsy's handwriting was never ruled out, maybe she did make this letter, and maybe she was so flustered and so upset that she did write it 3 times. What is odd about this is that apparently one of the times, or something from it, had been out of the house, like it was no longer there. Also, I did forget to mention that JonBenet's hands were bound and her mouth was covered in duct tape. And the duct tape was never found in the house either, which goes to think that it was an intruder. But couldn't have also been Patty writing that note while John was messing with the scene and making it look like that had happened. It would also explain why it didn't really match up. Like, here's somebody, maybe Patsy thought John was gonna take the body off somewhere, so she was going to make it look like a ransom and like, you know, we want money and all this type of thing. There was the coincidence that the money that was asked for was around the same amount, not the exact amount, but definitely around the same amount as John's Christmas bonus that year. I want to throw it in because a lot of people do press hard on that fact. Maybe John had another whole idea about what they were going to do and just decided to leave it at the house so it was all done there. Or maybe they had plans of just covering her up, leaving her at that, and trying to get people on some like wild goose chase while they did something else with the body. Who knows what they were thinking at this point. It's all so like jumbled up that it would kind of make you think maybe it was them, because they would have been so messed up during that time, whether or not it's their daughter, so you know that they would be just a mess. This would also explain why Patsy got up at 5:30 but didn't call 911 till 5:52. It was probably staged and rushed really fast so that she could hurry up and call as soon as possible, and that's why it took them a little while. So back to that 911 call. At that time, she was frantic. You guys heard it. But what I didn't mention was when that clip ended, that was it. Patsy hung up the phone. She didn't stay on the line. The lady obviously was saying, Patsy, Patsy, and was trying to ask her questions. Maybe Patsy was just like, you know, back to the intruder theory, maybe she was just like, I can't take this, just get here, and had to put the phone down. But back to the theory of it being the family, what Patsy didn't know is that she actually didn't hang up the receiver, and there's actually voices in the background, and the 911 operator didn't hang up the phone. She and the documentary I was talking about earlier did come forward and talk to them about it, and she said something like she heard them say that it was them or something crazy like that. I don't know it word for word. I can't remember off the top of my head, but even I was just kind of like, they would have gotten that. Like, they got some background voices, but they would have caught that if she really was saying that about actually committing the crime. But what you can hear after they analyzed this and slowed it down and turned up the volume on it and did all kinds of work with this 911 call, you can actually hear that it's 3 different voices in the room. And at the time, there was only supposed to be 4 people in that house. Well, really, the 3. John, Patsy, and Burke. So you can hear a man voice, and I can't say that this is exactly what is said, but this is what these people who analyze this think that the track says from listening to it through their headphones. They think that the man says, "We are not speaking to you," in a very stern voice, almost like he's talking to a child. And then you hear a woman say, "Oh, Jesus, what did you do?" And then you hear a little voice say from like a kid saying, "What did you find?" And that is all that they could really work with. But it makes you think that there was this conversation going on in this bedroom, and Burke had finally came in, and they're like, now we're confronting him on what happened. Because obviously, if they did do this, then they knew that something bad had happened to her and that he was the only other one in the house. So it had to have happened when they went to bed the night before. I'm sure a lot of it was covering their butts too, if they did do this, to make it look like it wasn't child neglect or anything like that, by not watching their children too. There's also the fact that they invited their friends over. They let everybody just kind of walk around freely. They didn't like say, hey, we're going to go to our friend's house so that you guys can take care of business here. If you want to send an officer down here to talk to us, then do that so that you can, you know, close this off for any evidence you can get. Like, you think that they'd be freaking out, like, my daughter's gone, you know, not like just sitting around the house all day. I would lose my mind. I wouldn't be able to just sit in a house and just wait around for these cops to figure out what to do. Like, I would go insane. And not even like searching the whole house already is just a little strange. But when the time came for the cop to say, let's all do the search, it is strange that John ran straight for the basement. And maybe he was thinking bottom to top, let's do it that way so that, you know, we can make sure we get every single, you know, part of the house. His friend said that her body was completely covered. How did he know that JonBenet was underneath there? Because he automatically freaked out and ran to her and scooped her up and ran upstairs with her. Another reason, why would he move the body? Why wouldn't he yell and say, she's down here, you know, and just leave her there so that they could get any evidence? This is hard for me to go with because I know, and I don't even want to think about it being my own kid, but you have to think, you don't know what you're going to do in that situation. But it did mess up a lot. And if he in fact did tamper with it, the DNA that was found underneath her fingernails and in her underwear, they did do DNA tests on Patsy, John, and the 2 older siblings. Now I have seen that it says that there was DNA on 5, so I'm assuming Burke was one of those, but I do think it's strange that it's not really talked about a whole lot, that Burke was tested. And I feel like if I knew 100% sure that he was, I feel like it would clear it up a little bit better for me. If they in fact all were, which I have seen somewhere that it did say 5, so that would make sense, then it kind of leans towards an intruder because it's like, where would that DNA come from unless she was, you know, messed with at a party or something like that that they had went to, but, or maybe during the day when everything was going on, but I feel like everybody would have had a closer eye on her than that. So that is very strange. Another place that I have read about this had said there was a door somewhere that was like ajar open, but I haven't really seen a lot of things about that. I've just heard about the window being tampered with, but from the inside. So that would honestly make me think if it was the intruder theory, then the intruder maybe left a door unlocked or something and came in while they were at the party or the dinner and then messed with the window for his escape maybe, or maybe freaked out after he had killed JonBenet. Maybe that wasn't even the plan. Maybe he freaked out that he did kill her and then just escaped out the window, like I said earlier. I feel like I went over every single theory I can think of. My head hurts right now. This episode was definitely all over the place. I knew it was going to be. This case is extremely long and just so drawn out and so jumbled up. It literally hurts my head thinking about every single thing and how it could literally be several different theories of what could happen. I do want to state that there was men that came forward and said they did it, but they were all ruled out by DNA test. The Ramseys did take a polygraph test. They, went through interviews. Their lawyers told them to decline interviews for a while. Then they started to reach out to like news outlets, which made them look so bad because they posted all these videos of her being this pageant girl. And a lot of the time they just looked a little stone cold and just stating, we did not kill our daughter. And not really like the emotions you think that you would see from parents like that, which it has been stated that Patsy especially was on some medication at the time, like antidepressants and that type of ordeal. What a lot of people didn't know either, which I've seen on something, is at that time, Patsy was already dealing with some cancer and she eventually went into remission after all of this, but that might have caused some of the way she was acting and stuff like that too, with just dealing with a lot. And obviously losing your daughter, that has to be so awful regardless of what had happened. But it still just leaves us all thinking, what happened to JonBenet? And I wish that I could close this up better than this. I wish that there was something to really say. I do feel like I'm leaving stuff out and there's just a lot more to it. This happened in '96, so 23 years ago. That's insane. I've come forward, I believe it was 2006 when Patsy had ovarian cancer once again, and that time she lost her battle. She did come out with a book talking about it and everything that happened to their life during that time. Burke and John have both came forward for interviews since, talking about it. Burke tried to like clear his name, and I kind of agree with everybody. It was very strange to me. I hated watching the interview with Dr. Phil. I hated it. It was very cringeworthy. He smiled a lot. A lot of people want to just say it's because of his nerves. It's because of a certain thing. Like, you know, he just felt really awkward talking about it, so it kind of made him smile. I understand it. When I get through really stressful times, and I'm around a lot of people especially, sometimes I just have to laugh. I just have to let it out and just like move on. So I don't know if it was that type of ordeal. Regardless, it was definitely very cringeworthy and hard to watch, talking about his dead sister while smiling. Burke was very young at the time, but I feel like even being 9, you would have that connection enough to scar you, especially if you had something to do with it. So that could be even why he may deal with some issues. He was very sheltered after that, obviously, and there's really not too much to say on this. I mean, that is pretty much it. If you have another theory, please let me know, and I can even add it to the blog post. Or anything that you know of that I left out. I really tried to rack my brain and remember everything on this case. From the pineapple to the train track that I feel like is left out a lot, but you can kind of see how certain things debunk certain things and how nothing really adds up. Like, it doesn't add up completely that it was an intruder. It doesn't really add up completely that it was in the family, and it's just so hard to think of what it really could have been. There was another man who, down the line, it's a whole ordeal. I don't even want to get into all of it. There was another guy who, apparently that night that it happened to JonBenet, he had called his friend and was crying and said, "I hurt a little girl." And he was a predator that lived right down the road, apparently. And they finally found him like years later. I want to say it was like even in a different country, maybe off on that, but I want to say he was somewhere else. And they located him and brought him in. And after doing like tons of these tests and DNA tests, maybe even a polygraph test, he was ruled out as not being somebody either. So it's hard, and it almost makes me wonder back then, like, what if like one of the DNA tests like didn't go through right? What if somebody mixed something up? Or, you know, I really wish that, since it was such a sought out case, I really wish that DNA tests could have been done again on everybody before they just completely turned the case cold. That is it for this episode. I'm going to leave it here because I'm sure this episode's going to be a long one, like my first one. But I wanted to get this one out because I've seen so many on JonBenet. I didn't want to put it off for too much longer. I knew it was going to be a hard one to tackle through without being super confusing, which I probably was. But I still hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys have been stuck on this case ever since, like me, let me know. You can even direct message me on Instagram at Caffeine Crime Podcast. Make sure you follow me there so you can follow along with episodes. And I also have my link in my bio there that shows all of my extra stuff, like my blog and all that kind of thing, where you guys will find my blog post on JonBenet. But yeah, if you have anything to add, I would love to go over it and maybe even add it to my blog. And yeah, I hope I didn't really miss anything too important, but if I did, like I said, it will be there. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Go over to @Caffeine Crime Podcast on Instagram and comment below the episode picture on what theory you think. Let me know. I would love to discuss this one more. This is definitely like such a debatable one. It's a good one to debate though on the different theories, and I feel like everybody has something else to throw at the other person to debunk each one of their theories, and that's why it's so hard, and that's why it's still a cold case, unfortunately. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this. If you guys did, I really, really appreciate the support. And I hope you guys enjoy and stay tuned. Next Tuesday, I'll be back with episode 4.
So if you guys seen in my Insta stories it was like last week, I posted about this episode and how all throughout it, I do want to apologize for how fuzzy it is. This has happened in the past, but it was due to my mic being not plugged in all the way. but that wasn't the case today. I literally filmed this makeup look beforehand and then went into this case right after that, and I wasn't having any mic issues until I started this episode. But while editing, certain parts really like stuck out to me. I was kind of freaked out a little bit at what was like catching on the mic. I slowed down a piece and turned it up a little bit, so I wanted to show it with you guys. I was pretty freaked out. I was up by myself at about 4 o'clock in the morning editing this, so I was a little spooked. It just sounds a little bit like an interference, and like I said, this hasn't really happened unless my mic was unplugged, but there was nothing like that going on here, and I have sat down and filmed these in the same spot before, so I don't know what could have been causing it, but I don't know, it was a little spooky, so I thought I would at least share it with you guys.